The chamber fell silent when Ambassador entered. 200 species watched her walk down the long pathway to the central platform. Some looked at her with curiosity, others looked with barely hidden contempt. A few, very few, looked with something like sympathy. Had made this walk many times in her 15 years as Earth's voice on the Galactic Council. She knew every tile beneath her feet. She knew which delegates would meet her eyes and which would look away. She knew the exact spot where the acoustics changed, where her voice would carry to. Every corner of this ancient hall today felt different. Today felt final. High Counselor of the Saurian Dominion stood at the elevated podium, his scales gleaming under the artificial lights. He was old, powerful, and had never hidden his distrust of humanity. His golden eyes tracked approach with cold satisfaction. The council recognizes Ambassador of the Terran Union, he announced. His translator rendered his hissing speech into flat mechanical English. You may respond to the resolution before us. Reached the platform and looked up at the assembled delegates. The delegation sat in their hovering chairs, their delicate frames too weak for standard gravity. The Meridian Collective occupied an entire section there. Hivemind representatives moving in perfect synchronization. The ambassador picked at his ceremonial robes, clearly bored. The envoy ambassador watched with open concern. Thank you, High Counselor, said. Her voice was steady. She had practiced this moment in her mind 1,000 times. I have read the Terran containment protocol in its entirety. I have consulted with my government. I would like to request that the Council reconsider this resolution. Jaw opened in what passed for a Saurian smile. The Council has already voted. The resolution passed with a 73% majority. There is nothing to reconsider. The resolution restricts human expansion to our current 12 systems, continued, keeping her tone neutral. It cites our evolutionary heritage as justification. It labels us a potential threat to galactic stability. In 200 years of Council membership, humanity has committed no act of aggression against any member species. We have contributed more peacekeeping forces per than any other civilization. We have responded to more disaster relief calls than the next 5 species combined. On what grounds does the Council declare us a threat? Murmurs rippled through the chamber. Some delegates shifted uncomfortably. Others nodded in agreement with words. Counselor of the Meridian Collective rose. Her voice came from multiple mouths at once, creating an eerie chorus. The human species evolved on a death world. Your biology is designed for violence. Your history is soaked in blood. The containment protocol is a precautionary measure. Surely you understand. I understand that the Saurian Dominion conquered 14 species before joining the Council, replied calmly. I understand that the Meridian Collective absorbed 3 civilizations through forced neural integration. I understand that the Empire maintained slave populations. Until 60 years ago, all of these species were welcomed into the Council without containment protocols. Why are humans different? The chamber erupted. Delegates shouted over each other. Slammed his ceremonial staff against the podium until order was restored. You dare compare humanity to the founding species? His voice carried a dangerous edge. You have been Council members for a mere 2 centuries. You are children. You should be grateful we allow you any representation at all. absorbed the insult. Without flinching, she had expected this, she had prepared for this. I see, she said quietly, the containment protocol stands declared. Humanity will restrict itself to its current territories. Human vessels will submit to inspection at any council checkpoint. Human military expansion will cease immediately. These terms are non-negotiable. Ambassador of the hegemony stood. Her people had always been friendly to humanity. They had abstained from the vote. High Counselor, perhaps we might discuss a compromise. The humans have been valuable partners. Surely they abstained. Interrupted. You have no voice in this matter. The decision is final. He turned his cold eyes back to does the Terran Union accept the Council's ruling? Looked around the chamber. One last time she saw the contempt, she saw the fear disguised as superiority. She saw 200 years of thankless service dismissed as nothing. She thought about the human engineers who kept the Meridian shipping lanes running. She thought about the human doctors who had stopped 3 pandemics that would have killed billions. She thought about the human soldiers who had died protecting Council borders from external threats. She thought about all the times humanity had asked for nothing more than respect and received only condescension. Very well, said. Her voice was calm, almost gentle. The Terran Union withdraws from the Galactic Compact, effective immediately. She turned and began walking toward the exit. For a moment there was stunned silence, then laughter began spreading through the chamber. Delegates looked at each other with amusement. The humans were bluffing. They had to be bluffing. Where would they go? What would they do without Council protection and trade access? Ambassador called after her, his tone mocking. You cannot simply leave. There are procedure, treaties to dissolve, assets to negotiate. Paused at the door. She looked back at the High Counselor with an expression that would haunt him for years to come. It was not anger. It was not defiance. It was something far worse. It was peace. Our legal team will be in contact regarding treaty dissolution. She said all human personnel will be withdrawn from Council operations within 90 days as per the exit clause in the original compact. We will honor every existing contract to the letter. After that, she smiled faintly. After that, you are on your own. She walked out. Door closed behind her. The laughter in the chamber continued for several minutes. Counselor made a joke about human dramatics, declared a recess for celebrations. Only Ambassador remained silent, watching the closed door with growing dread. Outside, walked through the stations corridors with purposeful steps. Her aide, Commander David, fell into step beside her. It's done, he asked quietly. It's done. They're laughing in there. Let them laugh. Reach the docking bay where her shuttle waited. They have no idea what's coming and what is coming. Ambassador stopped at the shuttle's entrance. She looked back at the station that had been her second home for 15 years, Concordia Prime, the great neutral ground, the symbol of galactic cooperation. She wondered how long it would stand once the humans were gone. Nothing, she said finally. That's exactly the point. Nothing is coming. We're not going to fight them. We're not going to threaten them. We're simply going to leave, and then they're going to learn exactly how much they needed us. She boarded the shuttle as it detached from the station and began its journey toward the nearest human gateway, activated a secure communication channel to Earth. This is She said, "It's done. Begin the quiet on." The other end, a voice responded with 2 words, "Understood, Ambassador." The shuttle jumped to faster than light speed, carrying away from Concordia Prime, away from the Galactic Council, away from 200 years of partnership that had never been a partnership at all. Behind her, the Council continued, celebrating their victory over the troublesome humans. They toasted to the containment protocol. They congratulated on his political masterpiece. They made plans for a future without human interference. None of them noticed that the lights in their quarters had dimmed slightly. The human engineers who maintained the station's power grid had already begun packing their things. The quiet had begun 6 months past. The Galactic Council waited for the humans to come. Crawling back, they never came. High Counselor had predicted the human withdrawal would last 2 weeks at most. Without access to Council trade routes, without the protection of the Galactic fleet, without the vast market of 200 species, the Terran Union would collapse. They would return humbled and obedient and accept whatever terms the Council offered. That was the plan. Reality had other ideas. The first sign of trouble came from the Meridian shipping lanes. For decades, human engineers had maintained the navigation beacons that guided ships through the treacherous gravitational currents between star systems. It was tedious work requiring constant adjustment and creative problem solving. The Meridians had always considered it beneath them. When the human engineering teams departed, the Meridian Collective assigned their own workers to maintain the beacons. Within 3 weeks, 2 beacons failed. A cargo ship carrying medical supplies to the outer colonies vanished into a gravity well. Search teams found only debris. Counselor submitted an emergency request for additional resources. The Council approved it without much discussion. These things happened. It had nothing to do with the humans. Then the beacons started failing faster. By the second month, the Meridian shipping lanes were operating at 60% capacity. Goods that once took days to transport now took weeks. Prices began rising across the eastern sectors. On Prime, a hospital ran out of critical medication. The shipment was delayed. Somewhere in the compromised lanes, 47 patients died waiting. Meanwhile, the Empire faced its own crisis. A new plague had emerged on one of their agricultural worlds. It spread quickly, jumping from host to host with terrifying efficiency. The medical corps struggled to contain it. This was not unprecedented. Plagues happened. The Council had protocols for such emergencies. What they discovered, however, was that their protocols depended heavily on humans. For the past century, human epidemiologists had served as the backbone of the Council's disease response network. They had a gift for pattern recognition, for seeing connections that other species missed. They had contained this exact strain of plague 5 times before, always quickly, always efficiently. Now they were gone. The requested assistance from other Council members. The sent scientists who worked slowly and methodically. The Sarians sent military units to enforce quarantine zones. The Meridians offered computational support that arrived weeks late due to their crippled shipping lanes. The plague spread to a second world, then a third. In the Council, Chambers addressed the growing concerns. With practice dismissal, temporary setbacks, he declared, the galaxy managed for before humans discovered. Fire we will adapt, not everyone was. Convinced. Ambassador of the hegemony had requested an audience with Earth's interim representative. They had not joined the containment protocol vote. They had maintained quiet diplomatic channels with humanity even after the withdrawal. She arrived at the human colony of New Geneva expecting to find a civilization in crisis. Instead, she found something that shocked her to her core. The humans were thriving. New Geneva's spaceport bustled with activity, ships bearing the flags of the hegemony, the Federation, and a dozen other minor powers filled the docking bays. Human engineers worked alongside alien colleagues, not as servant but as partners, was escorted to a meeting with Director, the Terran Union's new foreign minister. He was a tall man with gray hair and kind eyes that masked a sharp intelligence. Ambassador, he greeted her warmly. Thank you for coming. How are things in Council space? Hesitated diplomatic. Training demanded that she project strength, but looking at the bustling colony around her, she realized that pretense was pointless. Difficult, she admitted. The shipping lanes are compromised. The plague is spreading. Two of the minor powers are on the brink of war over the border dispute. Nodded slowly. Yes, we've been monitoring the situation. The border dispute, said carefully. Your diplomats were mediating that conflict for decades. When we left, there was no one to keep them talking. Finished her thought. We know we've received requests from both parties asking us to intervene. Hope flickered in sighs. Will you? No. The word hung in the air between them. Director, thousands could die. Thousands did die when the Council decided humanity was a threat to be contained. His voice remained calm, but there was steel beneath it. We spent 2 centuries serving the galaxy. We asked for nothing except respect. Instead, we were told we should be grateful for whatever scraps the Council threw us. He stood and walked to the window overlooking the spaceport. We are not leaving the galaxy, Ambassador. We are building something new, something better. They understand this, so do the come to us as equals, and we welcome them as equals. Joined him at the window. She watched a human technician explaining something to an engineer. Both were laughing. The Council sees this as a tantrum, she said quietly. They think you will exhaust yourselves in return. The Council sees what it wants to see. That is their greatest weakness. Turn to face her. We have trade agreements with 14 species now. Our economy is growing. Our people are happy. We have everything we need to build a future without the Council. And the Council, what happens to them, was silent for a long moment. That depends entirely on them. We are not seeking revenge. We are not planning attacks. We are simply gone. What they do with our absence is their choice. Returned to Council space 3 days later. She presented her findings to anyone who would listen. She showed data on the human economy, the growing trade network, the technological exchanges happening outside Council control. Most dismissed her as a human sympathizer that had always been too friendly with the Terran. They said her data was surely exaggerated. High Counselor reviewed her report in private. He read the economic projections. He studied the list of species now trading with humanity. He calculated the rate at which the Council's influence was eroding. For the first time since the humans had walked out, he felt something unfamiliar. He felt afraid, but he said nothing. To admit concern would be to admit error. The containment protocol had been his greatest political achievement. He would not abandon it now. Instead, he issued a statement to the council. The human situation is contained. Their little trading bloc is of no concern. The galaxy will continue as it always has. That night, another navigation beacon failed. A passenger liner carrying 300 Saurian citizens sent a distressed signal that echoed unanswered through empty space. The humans who might have rescued them were gone. The quiet continued. 18 months after the withdrawal, the galaxy began to break. Senior analyst of the Intelligence Bureau had been tracking the decline for nearly a year. Every week she compiled reports. Every week the numbers grew worse. Every week the council ignored her warnings. She sat in her small office aboard Concordia Prime, surrounded by holographic displays showing cascading failures. Across council space, the Meridian shipping lanes now operated at 38% capacity. The plague had spread to 6 worlds, killing over 2 million. Border war had exploded into open conflict, with both sides accusing the council of favoritism. And everywhere in every system the same pattern emerged. The places that functioned smoothly were the places where humans had never been involved. The places that crumbled were the places that had depended on human expertise, human creativity, human dedication. Had documented it all. The human agricultural scientists who had developed drought-resistant crops for the colonies gone, and the crops were failing. The human communications specialists who had maintained the deep space relay network gone, and messages now took days instead of hours. The human architects who had designed the living spaces aboard Concordia Prime itself gone, and sections of the station were becoming increasingly unstable. It was not sabotage. The humans had honored every contract. They had provided detailed documentation. They had offered to train replacements. The council had refused, too proud to admit they needed help. Now they were paying the price. Requested an audience with the High Council. After weeks of delays, she was finally granted 15 minutes. She walked into the chamber that had once hosted Ambassador's final appearance. The seats seemed emptier now. Several minor species had stopped sending representatives, citing travel difficulties or diplomatic disputes. Energy felt different, less confident, more desperate. High Counselor watched her approach with poorly hidden irritation. He had more important matters to discuss. The war was threatening to spill into Saurian territory. The plague was still spreading. The economy was contracting. Analyst, he said, not bothering to hide his dismissive tone, you have 15 minutes. Use them wisely. Activated her presentation. Data filled the air around her, charts, graphs, projections, all telling the same story. In the 18 months since humanity's withdrawal, Council GDP has declined by 12%, trade volume is down 34%, response times for emergency services have increased by 200%. Mortality rates from preventable disasters have tripled. She paused to let the numbers sink in. The delegates shifted uncomfortably. I have identified 472 critical systems that were maintained primarily by human personnel. Of these, 319 are now operating below acceptable parameters. 87 have failed completely. The remaining 66 are expected to fail. Within the next year, Counselor of the Meridian Collective interrupted, these failures are unrelated, you are constructing a narrative to support a predetermined conclusion. With respect, Counselor, the data is clear, highlighted a cluster of points. On her display, I can show you the correlation coefficients, I can show you the timeline overlays, every major system failure maps directly to human withdrawal from that sector. Coincidence? Declared the humans were never that important, then explained the hegemony. The chamber fell silent, brought up new data, trade figures, economic indicators, quality of life metrics, all from thee and their growing alliance with humanity. Since allying with the Terran Union, the economy has grown by 30%, their shipping lanes operate at full capacity, their worlds report the highest satisfaction ratings in their history, they have experienced 0 major system failures. She looked directly at the humans did not become less capable when they left us, we simply stopped benefiting from their capabilities. The High Counselor's scales darkened with anger. You are suggesting we should beg the humans to return after they abandon their obligations, after they turned their backs on the council that elevated them. I am suggesting that we made a grave error, kept her voice steady. The containment protocol was based on fear, not facts. We punished humanity for crimes they never committed, for threats they never made. And now we are suffering the consequences. Enough, slammed his staff against the podium. This hearing is concluded. Analyst, your report will be reviewed by the appropriate committees. Knew what that meant. Her report would be buried. Her warnings would be ignored. The council would continue pretending that everything was fine until the entire system collapsed around them. She gathered her materials and left the chamber. In the corridor outside, Ambassador of the was waiting. I heard you were presenting today, the ambassador said quietly. How did it go? How do you think? Nodded sadly. We tried to warn them before the vote. They did not listen then either. Analysts looked at the woman, a representative of a species that had chosen differently, that had maintained friendship with humanity, that was now thriving while the council crumbled. Why did you come today? She asked. To offer you a choice. Ambassador produced a small data chip. The Terran Union is expanding its scientific exchange program. They are looking for talented analysts from outside their alliance. People who can think clearly, people who ask difficult questions. Analysts stared at the chip. It represented everything she was not supposed to want: collaboration with the humans who had betrayed the council, abandonment of her duty to the Intelligence Bureau, admission that the council she served was failing. I am, she said slowly, my people remain loyal to the council. Your people are dying in council hospitals because the medicines cannot arrive on time. Ambassador pressed the chip into her hand. Loyalty is admirable, but loyalty to a failing system is just another word for suicide. She walked away, leaving Analyst alone. In the corridor, that night returned to her quarters. She accessed the encrypted communications network and began composing a message to her family on the. She told them about her presentation. She told them about the council's response. She told them about the choice she had been offered. Her mother responded within hours. Her words were simple. The galaxy is changing. The wise Change with it, we love you, looked at. The data chip in her hand, she looked at. The reports on her desk, the warnings. That would never be heard. Predictions of disasters that could still be prevented if anyone would just listen. Then she made her choice. She packed a single bag, booked passage on a freighter, and left Concordia Prime. Forever behind her, the stations. Environmental systems flickered. Another human-designed component was beginning to fail. The maintenance team scrambled to compensate, not understanding why. Their repairs never lasted, never realizing that the humans had not just built these systems. They had understood them in ways no one else could replicate. The quiet continued, and the galaxy continued to break. 3 years after the withdrawal, the Galactic Council did something it had never done before. It threatened humanity with war. The decision came from desperation. The conflict had consumed 3 systems. The plague had killed 11 million. The economy had contracted so severely that several minor species could no longer afford council membership dues. 17 systems had formally requested permission to leave the compact and join the human-led Terran Cooperative. High Counselor was losing control. His political enemies sensed weakness. Meridian Collective had begun whispering about a vote of no confidence. They were demanding reparations for the plague. Response failures. Even his own Sarian Dominion was questioning his leadership. He needed a victory. He needed to prove that the Council was still powerful, still relevant, still capable of bending the galaxy to its will. He needed to bring the humans back. The resolution passed by a narrow margin. Ambassadors of the and several other delegates walked out in protest. It did not matter. The Council had spoken. Humanity would return to the compact, or humanity would face the consequences. A fleet of 200 warships assembled at the edge of Council space. They represented the combined military might of the Saurian Dominion, the Meridian Collective, and the Empire, the 3 founding powers of the Galactic Council. It was the largest military force deployed since the Consolidation Wars 500 years ago. Admiral of the Saurian Navy commanded the fleet. He was a veteran of countless campaigns, respected throughout Council space for his tactical brilliance. He had never lost a battle. He had also never fought humans. The fleet jumped to the coordinates provided by Council intelligence, the outer boundary of the Terran Union's claimed territory. They emerged from faster-than-light travel, expecting to find token defenses, perhaps a few patrol vessels that would retreat at the sight of overwhelming force. Instead, they found Admiral Wei waiting for them. A single human battleship hung in space before them. It was smaller than the Saurian dreadnoughts, less imposing than the Meridian carrier swarms. By all conventional measures, it was laughably outmatched. Admiral opened a communication channel. Human vessel, this is Admiral of the Galactic Council Combined Fleet. You are ordered to stand down and escort us to your nearest command authority. Failure to comply will be considered an act of war. The response came immediately. Admiral Wei appeared on an older human with silver hair and calm eyes. He wore no medals, carried no obvious weapons. He looked like someone's grandfather, not a military commander. Admiral Wei said pleasantly, "Thank you for the warning. Before you proceed, I would like to share some information with you. I believe you will find it Relevant data began streaming to the Council fleet sensors. At first did not understand what he was seeing. Then, slowly the picture became clear. Weapons, platforms, thousands of them hidden throughout the space around his fleet. Invisible until the humans chose to reveal them. Each one was small, easily overlooked, but the combined firepower was staggering. Defense satellites, monitoring stations, communications relays, a complete military infrastructure that the Council had never detected, never even suspected existed. And behind Wei's single battleship, more human vessels were appearing, not 200 but 2,000, each one emerging from concealed positions. Throughout the system, we have spent 3 years preparing for this moment, we explained. His voice remained calm, almost friendly, not because we wanted war, but because we knew you might eventually try to force us back. We hoped it would not come to this. We are disappointed that it has. Admiral stared at the sensor data. His tactical officers were running calculations, and every projection showed the same result: total annihilation of the Council fleet within minutes. You were hiding this, said slowly, all along, even when you were Council members. We were protecting ourselves. Why? Replied, the Council never trusted us. We would have been fools to trust the Council completely. He leaned forward slightly, but we never used these weapons against you. We never threatened you. We served faithfully for 200 years, even knowing that our service might one day be repaid with betrayal. What do you want? I want to ask you a question, Admiral. We's expression grew serious. We defended your borders for 2 centuries. We healed your sick. We fed your hungry. We maintained your infrastructure. We asked for nothing except to be treated as equals. Why couldn't you give us that? Why was it so hard? Had no answer. He was a military officer, not a diplomat. He followed orders. He did not make policy, but looking at his sensor displays, looking at the overwhelming force the humans had assembled, he understood something profound. The humans could have conquered the Council at any time. They could have used their hidden weapons to dominate the galaxy. Instead, they had served, they had helped, they had waited patiently for respect that never came. And when that respect was finally, definitively, they had simply walked away. What are your orders, Admiral? His first officer asked quietly. Thought about his options. He could attack and watch his fleet die. He could retreat and face execution for cowardice, or he could do something that had never been done in Saurian history. He could admit defeat without fighting. Helm, he said slowly, signal the fleet. We are withdrawing. Admiral, the humans are right. We came here to threaten them into submission. We came here because we could not accept that we needed them more than they needed us. We were wrong. He turned to face his crew. I will not sacrifice this fleet for the Council's pride. Signal the withdrawal. The Council fleet turned and jumped away. 200 warships retreated from a battle they never fought, defeated by an enemy who had never fired a shot on the Admiral Wei watched them go. His expression was not triumphant. It was sad. Admiral, his first officer said. Should we pursue? No, we shook his head. We made our point. Anything more would just be cruelty. He turned away from the screen. Send a message to the Council. Tell them we remain open to dialogue. Tell them we have no desire for war. Tell them that when they are ready to speak as equals, we will Listen, the message was sent. The human fleet dispersed back to their hidden positions, and across council space the news spread like wildfire. The humans had defeated the largest military force in galactic history without firing a single weapon. In her new office on the human colony of New Geneva, analyst now senior advisor of the Terran Cooperative watched the reports coming in. She thought about her former colleagues on Concordia Prime, about the council that had refused to listen, about the disaster that could have been avoided if anyone had simply been willing to admit they were wrong. She hoped it was not too late for them to learn, but watching the news feeds, watching the council's angry denials, watching High Counselor blame the military for the failed operation, she was not optimistic. Some lessons she knew had to be learned the hard way. 5 years after the withdrawal, the Galactic Council was dying, not with a dramatic collapse or a violent revolution, but with a slow, quiet bleeding away of everything that had once made it powerful. Species that had been members for were leaving. Trade routes that had connected empires were falling silent. The great chamber on Concordia Prime, which had once hosted 200 delegations, now held barely 90. The Terran Cooperative, meanwhile, had grown to include 37 species. They called it an alliance, not a compact. They made decisions by consensus, not majority vote. They treated every member, from the smallest single world civilization to the sprawling human territories, as an equal partner. It was everything the council had refused to be. Former High Counselor watched these developments from his estate on the Soren. He had been removed from power 2 years ago, blamed for the military humiliation, blamed for the economic collapse, blamed for everything that had gone wrong since the humans left. He was old now. His scales had dulled. His once powerful frame had grown weak. Most days he sat in his garden, staring at the sky, thinking about the decisions that had led to this moment. He thought about them constantly. When the message arrived from Earth, he almost deleted it without reading. What could the humans possibly want with him? Now to gloat, to demand an apology, to offer him a place in their new order as some sort of trophy. But curiosity won. He opened the message. It was from Ambassador, the same woman who had walked out of the council chamber 5 years ago, the same woman whose quiet words had started this entire chain of events. She was requesting a meeting, a private audience, no officials, no records, just 2 old enemies talking. Should have refused. His advisors certainly would have told him to refuse. But his advisors were gone. His power was gone, and his pride, the pride that had driven him to push the containment protocol, the pride that had blinded him to humanity's value, had been thoroughly beaten out of him. He accepted. Meeting took place on a neutral station in unclaimed space. Arrived alone, looking older but no less composed. Came with a single aide, more for medical support than protection. They sat across from each other in a small conference room. For a long moment neither spoke. "You look tired," finally said. "I am tired," saw no point in denial. "I have been tired for years, tired of fighting, tired of pretending, tired of being wrong." Nodded slowly. "I know the feeling, do you?" There was no anger in his voice, only genuine curiosity. "You won. Your people are thriving. You have everything you wanted. We have security. We have respect. We have partnerships built on equality. folded. Her hands on the table, but we did not want this. We never wanted to leave. We wanted to belong. Then why did you go? Because you gave us no choice. Voice remained calm, but there was old pain. Beneath the surface, we served the council faithfully for 200 years. We gave everything we had, and what did we receive? Containment protocols, mockery. The message that no matter how much we contributed, we would never be good enough. Was silent. He had no defense to offer. Everything she said was true. I pushed the protocol because I was afraid of you, he admitted finally. The words came slowly, painfully, like confessing a crime. Your species rose so quickly. You adapted so easily. You seemed to be everywhere, involved in everything, making yourselves essential to every system. I saw you spreading through the galaxy like a disease, and I was terrified of what would happen when you decided you wanted more than service. So you tried to stop us before we could threaten you, yes, and in doing so I created the very threat I feared. He laughed bitterly. The irony is not lost on me, Ambassador. I pushed you away, and you built an alliance stronger than anything the Council ever created. I called you dangerous, and you proved you could have destroyed us at any time, but chose not to. I was so afraid of human power that I never stopped to consider human restraint. Studied him for a long moment. Why did you agree to meet me? Because I want to understand. Leaned forward. You had the military power to conquer us. You had the economic leverage to crush us. After the failed fleet action, you could have demanded anything: territory reparations, our complete surrender. Instead, you sent a message offering dialogue. Why didn't you take revenge? Was quiet for a moment, gathering her thoughts. Because revenge would have proven you right, she said finally. You called us aggressive. You called us a threat. If we had responded to your fear with conquest, we would have become exactly what you accused us of being. We would have won the war and lost ourselves. She stood and walked to the window, looking out at the stars. We left because we were tired of being treated as lesser. We built the cooperative because we wanted to prove there was a better way, but we never wanted you to suffer. We wanted you to see, to understand, to realize that partnership was always possible, that we were never your enemies. And now asked, the council is collapsing. My people are struggling. What happens next? Turn back to face him. That depends on you, not you personally. The council, the species who remain. You can continue pretending that nothing is wrong, that the humans were never important, that everything will return to normal, or you can admit that you made a mistake and try something different. The council will never apologize to humanity. Their pride will not allow it. We are not asking for an apology. Return to her seat. We are asking for acknowledgement, not of our superiority, of our equality. The Terran cooperative is open to any species that wants to join, not as subordinates, not as supplicants, as partners. She produced a data chip and placed it on the table between them. This is an invitation for the Sarian Dominion for any council species that wants to participate in something new. There are no preconditions except a willingness to treat others as equals. Stared at the chip. You would accept us. After everything I did, we would accept anyone who is willing to learn. Its expression softened slightly, including you personally. You made terrible mistakes, but you are here now asking Questions trying to understand that. Matters that is the beginning of. Chain picked up the chip. It felt impossibly light in his ancient hands. I cannot speak for my people, he said slowly. I have no power anymore, no influence. You have your voice, you have your story, sometimes that is enough. 3 months later, the first joint session of the reformed Galactic Assembly took place on New Geneva. 47 species attended, the 37 members of the TAN Cooperative and 10 former council species who had accepted the invitation to participate. Ambassadors stood at the central podium looking out at the gathered delegations. Humans sat beside. Saurians floated beside species that had been enemies for centuries, now work together toward common goals. We are here because we chose to be, said, not because anyone forced us, not because anyone conquered us. We are here because we believe in something better. A galaxy where every species, regardless of size or strength or history, has a voice. She paused, letting her gaze sweep across the assembly. We do not forget the past. We remember the mistakes, the conflicts, the wounds that brought us here, but we choose to move forward. We choose to build instead of destroy. We choose to trust instead of fear. In the audience, former High Counselor listened to her words. He had come not as a delegate but as an observer, a witness to the new order he had inadvertently helped create. Beside him, senior advisor leaned over. How does it feel? She asked quietly. Watching this. Consider the question. Strange, he admitted. I spent my whole life believing that power came from domination, that the strong ruled and the weak obeyed. But this, he gestured at the assembly around them, this is stronger than anything I ever built, and it was created without conquering anyone. That is the human secret, said. They do not want to rule, they want to belong. When you them that they built their own place to belong, and now everyone else wants to join them on the stage. Concluded her speech. Let this be the beginning of something new, not a council that dictates, not an empire that commands, but a community that cooperates. We have all made mistakes. Today we start making them right. Assembly rose to their feet. Applause filled the chamber, not the polite, formal acknowledgement of the old council, but genuine celebration. Stepped down from the podium, she caught eye across the crowded room and gave him a small nod. He returned it. Outside, the flags of 47 species flew together in the artificial breeze of New Geneva's environmental systems. None flew higher than the others, none claimed precedence. It had taken 5 years of suffering. It had taken the collapse of an ancient institution. It had taken humanity walking away from everything they had built. But finally, at last, they were equals. And that was worth more than any conquest.